Welcome to Trauma Bay. She's not crazy. That word, crazy, is a lazy word. It flattens complexity. It dismisses what we don't understand. What people call crazy is often strategy disguised as chaos. Beneath the emotional storms, the outbursts, the seductive highs and depressive lows, there's a pattern, sometimes unconscious, sometimes disturbingly aware. She's not crazy. She's calculated. And if you pay attention long enough, you'll see the method in the madness. This is the psychology of seduction laced with suffering, of control masked as vulnerability, of love weaponized as a means of survival. We are entering the mind shaped by borderline personality disorder, one of the most misunderstood and stigmatized mental structures, especially among women. But to stop at the clinical is to miss the philosophical. Because what we're looking at isn't just a disorder, it's a raw, exposed nerve of human nature, turned up to the loudest volume. And in it, there's a kind of terrifying brilliance. Let's start by understanding something fundamental. A person with borderline traits doesn't seduce because they enjoy the chase. They seduce because connection is survival. Emotional intensity isn't just drama, it's a defense. Their core fear isn't rejection. It's annihilation through abandonment. It's the feeling that if someone leaves, they themselves might cease to exist. But here's where it gets complicated. This fear, this aching vulnerability, often comes wrapped in charm, in sensuality, in a magnetic pull that can be hard to explain. It's not performance, it's instinct. The borderline woman isn't faking her seduction. She's surviving through it. That intense gaze, that whirlwind connection, the way she makes you feel like you're the only one who ever mattered, that's not just manipulation. That's her emotional lifeline. Nietzsche once said, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster." But what if the monster you're fighting is the internal void? The silent scream of a child who was never fully seen, never truly heard? What if the manipulation isn't about power, but about desperately preventing that original wound from bleeding again? Borderline personality is often painted as instability. But that instability is usually the result of extreme emotional sensitivity combined with an inability to self-regulate. Philosophically, it's the problem of identity without anchor. Imagine being a house with no foundation. Every storm, real or imagined, feels like the end. So what do? You build quick scaffolds. You find people to act as anchors. You cling, you push, you seduce, you rage. You do whatever it takes to avoid the inner collapse. Not because you're evil, but because to sit with the emptiness would be unbearable. This is where seduction enters the picture. Seduction is not just about attracting, it's about control. And control is the only thing that stands between the borderline psyche and total emotional disintegration. But here's the philosophical twist. Isn't all seduction a form of control? Isn't every human being in some way performing, curating, luring, not just for sex, but for validation, connection, influence? The difference is that the borderline does it with a kind of existential urgency. It's not calculated in the cold, psychopathic sense. It's calculated the way a drowning person might calculate how to pull someone else into the water for support. It's survival logic, not moral, not evil, just raw. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." For someone with borderline traits, the unconscious is a battlefield. Old abandonment wounds act like landmines. Fear of being left can twist into possessiveness. A perceived slight becomes betrayal. Emotions swing not because they want chaos, but because their sense of self is entangled with whoever is closest. There is no self without the other. And that is a terrifying place to live from. Now let's talk about identity. A key feature of borderline personality is identity disturbance. Who am I when I'm not reflecting someone else's desires, needs, fears? When the mirror leaves, the person shatters. So the borderline often adapts to whoever they're with. They can appear intoxicatingly compatible, like a soulmate who reads your mind. But this isn't deception in the traditional sense. It's psychological survival through emotional mimicry. In a way, they become emotional shapeshifters. Not to exploit, but to avoid being abandoned for being too much or not enough. And the irony? This very shapeshifting creates instability in relationships, which then leads to the abandonment they feared in the first place. The snake eats its own tail. You might wonder, how much of this is conscious? That's the dark paradox. Some of it is painfully self-aware. Many people with borderline traits know exactly what they're doing. They hate themselves for it. They beg you not to leave even while pushing you away. They split the world into saints and demons. One moment you're the savior, the next you're the destroyer. And yet beneath the chaos is often a high intelligence, an emotional sharpness that can read a room like radar. Seduction becomes an art of reading need. Yours, theirs, everyone's. Philosophers have long grappled with the idea of the self. David Hume argued there is no coherent self, just a bundle of perceptions. In borderline psychology, this is painfully literal. Without emotional consistency, the self is a fragmented kaleidoscope. And so, if seduction becomes the tool to stabilize the self, can we really call it madness? Or is it simply an adaptive strategy in a cruel, emotional economy? This brings us to the ethical question. What do you do when someone's survival strategies hurt others? When the borderline's fear manifests as control, rage, emotional blackmail? Are they responsible? Are they evil? Here, we must tread carefully. Compassion doesn't mean excusing harm, but demonizing someone for psychological adaptations they didn't choose isn't justice. It's cruelty. From a Machiavellian lens, every human relationship involves manipulation. The only difference is in how conscious and how strategic it is. The borderline woman may not wield her seduction to dominate like a narcissist, but she uses it to regulate, to bind you to her, to prevent the perceived death that comes with emotional distance. This isn't about excusing harm, it's about understanding it. If we want to solve the puzzle, we need to see the whole picture. The borderline doesn't destroy relationships because she enjoys the wreckage. She destroys them because she fears being destroyed first. And yet, amidst all this, there's something poetic. People with borderline traits often love with a kind of wild, unfiltered intensity that is rare in our numb world. They throw themselves into love the way others tiptoe. They feel in color when most people live in grayscale. And that's both their beauty and their tragedy. Many philosophers, from Kierkegaard to Nietzsche, have argued that the human condition is one of contradiction. We desire connection but fear it. We crave intimacy but sabotage it. We want to be known, but are terrified of being truly seen. The borderline lives these contradictions on maximum volume, and in that way they're not so different from the rest of us, just more raw, more exposed, more tragic. So no, she's not crazy, she's calculated. But not in the cold way you think. She's calculating how much she can show you before you leave, how much she can cry before you label her unstable, how much she can seduce you before she pushes you away. She's not playing a game. She's trying to survive the war inside her chest. And if you've ever loved someone like this, you know the truth. You weren't just seduced. You were drawn into a storm. A storm that wanted to be understood. A storm that maybe just wanted to be held without being told it was too much. Because in the end, the borderline's greatest seduction isn't their body or their words or their charm. It's the illusion that you can save them. That your love can stitch the pieces together. That you can be the one who stays. But you can't save someone who's still at war with themselves. You can only understand them, and in that understanding maybe save yourself.